Ethereum hit all-time highs yesterday and was rejected, leaving Ethereum struggling to keep above $2,000. Can Ethereum recover from this and then retest all-time highs again? In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the latest Ethereum news as well as Ethereum technical analysis to look exactly where Ethereum is headed in the coming hours and days. Guys, hello and welcome to the House of Crypto. I make videos about Ethereum as well as Cardano and other cryptocurrencies. So if you're new to the channel, then make sure you hit that like and subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of the latest happening in the crypto markets. Without further ado then, let's jump into the first piece of news on Ethereum. Okay, so I just want to come over to this article over on today. Obviously, it's about 24 hours old because it's telling us that Ethereum is currently at $2,600, which obviously, as we know, right at the time of making this video, it's sat at around 2140. I've obviously talked about Raoul Pal on this channel before, who is obviously a very famous Bitcoin bull, but he's been looking at this chart here, and what we're looking at is sort of a bit of a cup and handle pattern. So often we tend to have a big rounded bottom. We might see a bit of a rejection push down, which is sort of like the handle of the cup before pushing it up. And you know, as it's currently sat, it's around 4.3% on this chart, the Ethereum Bitcoin chart. Potential here to then double, to then make up this sort of dip here, which would take it to over 6% Ethereum. And what Raoul Pal says that's really interesting is, at this point in the risk cycle, with ETH 2.0 coming, meaning cheaper fees and less supply, I'm struggling not to sell all my Bitcoin and move my entire position into ETH. To be clear, I'm a massive Bitcoin bull, but I think Ethereum is the better asset allocation for performance right now. This is a guy who put around $7 million back in September into Bitcoin. So obviously at the moment he's sitting on quite a pile of money, and he's obviously very keen on Bitcoin, but he's now starting to think that Ethereum is probably the place to be. And we've seen, in the last couple of days, Ethereum kind of break free of its Bitcoin tether. Usually it's been kind of following Bitcoin around, but it's really nice that it's finally sort of broken that tether, and it could be potentially destined for some amazing things. Coming across to this next piece of information over on fxstreet.com, Ethereum miners raise gas limit to 15 million as on-chain activity increases. It's only been raised around 7 times during history, and the reason they're doing this is because there's such an enormous volume of trading going on at the moment with Ethereum that the network's sort of struggling to cope with it. So one way they can do it is to raise the gas limit on miners. Okay, so raising the gas limit could be a temporary solution to fix high gas fees and network congestion. Okay, obviously, DeFi, NFTs, we're hearing about this all the time through social media, through the news, and this is probably one of the main reasons or main drivers behind Ethereum. Obviously, the crypto market itself is doing very well. Bitcoin's been doing very well, drawing a lot of attention, and people are perhaps more interested in investing in Ethereum because maybe they understand a bit more about the use case of what Ethereum can do than perhaps what the use case of Bitcoin is. Also gives people the opportunity to buy a whole coin because it's around sort of the $2,000 level. It's significantly easier to buy a whole coin than it is perhaps to buy a $50,000 Bitcoin. Okay, so people like to kind of own the whole thing. Maybe they're not kind of aware of the concept of being able to own parts of a coin. This is over on the Ethereum US dollar chart on the 4-hour. As I mentioned the other day on my last Ethereum video, we were coming down in here, and I said that if it was to break out here, that we would be moving up, perhaps first of all finding resistance around this level here before testing the top of this wedge pattern here. And actually what we've seen is a big rejection from this level here, where a huge amount of sell volume, which you can see with these red candles, has come all the way down. And literally as we're speaking, we're kind of again testing the bottom level of this wedge. This is not necessarily a rising or ascending triangle at the moment because it still needs to sort of be validated. We've got 1, 2, a couple of hits on both sides, but it kind of needs to sort of travel down a bit further along before we can possibly validate this as a pattern. So, until that kind of happens, it does appear that we appear to be sort of moving into this consolidation pattern, having hit here once, twice, and now, earlier on we had a big spike down, finding this line of support here on this white line, and then literally as I speak, sitting around the top of this yellow pattern. If we were to drop out of that yellow pattern, then we could potentially see a further drop down towards this $1,800 level. And we've got fairly significant lines of support around these levels. So I think At the moment, we're likely to see another bounce all the way back up to this top side. Obviously, be very careful around these times. If it does break through this level, then we could see it drop very, very quickly. Okay, but at the moment it appears to be holding this level here. For us to be able to confirm whether or not we're going to see a bounce, then we need to look at the candlestick pattern. So at the moment we've got this big red candle coming down, but we would like to see maybe another big engulfing candle, so something like here where we've got, okay, this is a small green candle, but a big engulfing candle coming in next to it, which would indicate that the pressure is now coming from the bulls and would push to the upside. So I want to draw your attention again to this. When people, for the last couple of days, we saw the price go from about $2,000 and it went up about $600, which is, as a percentage, good sort of 30% rise. That's a significant gain. When you get moves like that, everyone kind of starts to tell their mates and their mates, and everyone just chucks money in without perhaps paying much attention to what's going on or how the markets move. This is quite a dangerous time, okay, as an investor. If you think back to like the Wall Street bets and Dogecoin and the rise of Dogecoin, which saw sort of 50% drops in like a day. When you get a lot of inexperienced people coming into the market, it can create a lot of it can make it much more volatile. That's because if you come in and you buy at around $2,500 and you're not aware of how quickly cryptocurrencies can move, if it dumps $300 in a day, then people are probably going to start selling, and then you get this like massive snowball effect. And that's probably what we've seen happen over the last sort of 12 hours, maybe a bit more, where we saw a big dump down to the downside. So always be aware when people are talking about making lots of money that there is always potential for risk, and to protect yourself about that from one, doing your own research, and two, always never risking more money than you can afford to lose. Okay, so jumping over to the Ethereum US dollar on the daily chart, as you can see, we're still in this nice big pattern here, and we talked about this pattern a while back. Okay, so we had this triangle pattern here, and we've talked about where the breakout would come for that. And if we do this, what I want to draw your attention to, that is yesterday pretty much, or early on yesterday, we came up and we pretty much to the dollar hit the exact target for that. So if you took that trade, obviously this is a while back, congratulations. This is probably a couple of weeks in the building process. As I've mentioned in the past, once we have a target in mind, it doesn't go there in a straight line. It will tend to kind of bounce around a bit, eventually usually gets there in the end, but doesn't always get there. Now, as we look at this target, so my next anticipated move, as we're probably going to hold this level here, is probably going to move up towards here, and we'll probably hit somewhere around the $2,700 mark. We may then see kind of a retrace back to the other side, or we may just sort of see a move straight up to the other side around this point here. Now, what I want to draw your attention to is this wedge has been forming over quite a long period of time. What I want to be aware of is that wedges like this, they can break to the downside. Okay, so although in the kind of shorter term, I anticipate that we're probably going to be coming up towards the $2,800, $3,000 move, because I think still a lot of people are very keen. As we've seen today, there's a big amount of volume buying into the market after that big sell-off. I feel there's still like a good bit of upside move to come, but I think the psychological barrier at $3,000 is quite a significant one. So what I could see happening is something a bit like this. So just ignore the writing on this, but this is obviously a similar kind of pattern to what we've seen. And as we look at it, we've come up, we've touched, we've dropped back down, and we're literally sat around this position here. Now these patterns can break to the upside, and we need to wait for those indicators when they happen, where we might see it break up. If it breaks up and out and confirms itself and then heads to the upside, then great. However, be aware that something like this could be on the cards once we start getting towards the $3,000 level. Okay, so as I've already mentioned, in my eyes, we're probably going to be pushing up towards the sort of top level here, around the $2,800 to the $3,000 level. But I think $3,000 is going to cause quite a rejection, because I think a lot of people have it in their mind as a target. For many people who would have been buying in around here, that's a 5x, and people would have been making money all the way through here. But it could be on the cards that we would potentially take a drop down to this sort of level here, and if it was to drop out of here, then then potentially the target price would be around the bottom of this pattern. Now, I'm not saying realistically right now that we're going to be heading back down towards $1,000, but you know, it's always within the realms of possibility. Okay, that said, I'm still very bullish in the short term. As long as we can hold inside of this triangle pattern, then I think we've got a fairly good chance to be back towards the sort of $2,600 level. And you know, we fell sort of within 12 hours from this level all the way down to here, and you know, there's nothing to say that that move back to the upside couldn't take a similar amount of time. So we'll watch this very carefully. This is not a good time necessarily to be buying or selling, because you know, it's at a key decision point. If it is to break to the downside, then you know, we could potentially lose if we go into a trade. One way we could look at it, if we do want to put a buy in, we actually can put our stop loss literally, or not very well drawn, literally just underneath, you know, allowing for perhaps a little bit of a wick down, because then you know, our potential upside is really big. So you know, we could perhaps have it like a sort of a 10-to-1 in terms of our risk versus reward, and that's what it's all about. Yeah, not being emotional, not getting upset about things not working for us. Now, just before we finish, then let's jump over to the Ethereum Bitcoin chart. Now, very interesting if we look at this chart pattern, considering that we looked earlier at a similar pattern on the Ethereum US dollar, where we've actually been bouncing, and you know, as you can see, we came up, we tested, and we bounced down to the downside. This means that today, Ethereum versus Bitcoin, Ethereum is currently 4% down against Bitcoin. But you know, as we know, Ethereum has taken a huge run recently, and while Bitcoin has actually been losing, Ethereum has been making up significant ground on it, as you can see from this huge spike here on the daily. Guys, let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen with Ethereum. Are we going to be basically able to break out the top of this wedge, or are we potentially going to see a rejection to the downside for a bit of a cooling off period? Now, if we get a cooling off period, I'm not saying that necessarily it's going to, you know, it's the end. Potentially we'll have a bit of a cooling off period before seeing an enormous kind of final pump for this bull cycle. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Please make sure you hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It really helps me get this content out to more people. And if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to be kept up to date with all of the latest happening in Ethereum, as well as the cryptocurrency market. Without further ado then, I will see you tomorrow with another video. Thank you and bye-bye.